Hello, this is Ellen Butler, and I write the Karina Cardinal Mystery Series. When you walk the halls of power, make sure your wits and stilettos are razor sharp. You are listening to the Dark and Stormy Book Club podcast.
Hello, and welcome to Dark and Stormy Book Club. Today we talk with the author, Gary Edgington. Enjoy!
I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
Outside the Wire by Gary Edgington was published by Koehler Books. A retired LA counterterrorism cop and a fearless Army doctor risk everything, including their burgeoning romance, as they battle clandestine Iranian operatives bent on the slaughter of thousands of innocents and ultimately the destruction of America. After a year-long lull, local Iraqi insurgents launch a deadly mortar barrage on the sprawling Camp Victory base in Baghdad, Iraq. Rick Sutherland, a retired LAPD lieutenant working as an embedded counterterrorism advisor, is wounded in the attack, and a local interpreter is killed. Along with Major Nancy Weaver, his former doctor and now partner, Rick embarks on an off-the-books investigation that quickly morphs into a race to stop murderous Iranian operatives from exploding multiple dirty bombs during a critical meeting of U.S. and foreign heads of state. Working together, Nancy and Rick make a formidable team. But will it be enough? We are thrilled to welcome Gary Edgington to the program. He has a fascinating book out called Outside the Wire. Welcome, Gary.
Well, thank you for having me. I am really thrilled to be here. I've listened to a few of your podcasts and listened to the authors that you've had on, and it's really impressive. It's very cool.
Thank you. We've been plugging away at this for almost 5 years now.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's all of the above.
Right. Well, I've listened to them for years, but I've only been here for the past month and a half or so. And I'm like, oh my goodness, are we interviewing another person? Come on now. Now you want to do a book club?
My son does the podcast for Hatchard's Bookstore in London.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and he's Ryan Edgington, and they do a lot of fabulous guests. And he is like, it's a slog. It's so much work, and the editing and all of it. So he tells me about it. I know. If I was wearing a hat, I'd take it off to you.
You can pretend. This is just audio. And so people wouldn't have known that you didn't have a hat.
That's true. Indeed.
That would be okay.
Well, when this comes out, we'll ask you to send it to him and get his critique on what he thinks.
There you go.
He critiques all of them.
Of course. Well, when you're in the industry, that makes a difference. You hear things differently. I have talked to my daughter is going to school for animation and then also stop motion animation. And so I do not get to watch Coraline without a critique. I don't get to see Nightmare Before Christmas without, this is how they And I mean, it is my fault. We started her on Wallace and Gromit when she was very young, and she loved it. So I would think your son is probably in it for a variety of reasons. Have you been
Oh,
writing
totally.
his whole life?
Well, actually, he's a film guy, and he was
Oh,
a
okay.
filmmaker and went to Emerson in Boston. I could relate to the long distance thing about college out of
Yes.
state. What you were saying, I was laughing to myself thinking about that. We had two
Yeah.
out of state. He's also screenwriting as well. And
Oh,
he loves
cool.
books, always has loved books and loves writing. So this sort of fits his bill while
Wow, that,
he fights his way into the film industry.
Can be the thing that
Right.
consistently pays the bills, because then you enjoy it more, or at least I do,
Mhm.
instead of something that I want to do. Have you ever experienced that before, or are you like just
No,
happy
'cause
go lucky?
Well, see, actually, this is my side hustle.
Okay, yes.
I retired from law enforcement and been collecting a pension and beating the actuary tables now since 2008. But I didn't stop working. But I'm actually going to be retiring from my present gig and hanging up my guns in May of this year and working full time. I am working on the second book and I'm well along, but work gets in the way sometimes,
It does.
Law enforcement requires a lot of writing, report
Yes.
writing, investigative writing. I don't feel terribly creative after I've written a 5 or 10 page investigative. I
Right.
just don't.
No, and that makes sense. Although I would think, and I swear we'll talk about your book in just a second.
I'm
I
enjoying this.
feel
Are you
like-
kidding?
I
This is
know, right?
wonderful.
So, background wise, having law enforcement in your background,
Mhm.
has that helped you, or does it give you a little too much information for your books that you don't know how to get across to a layperson?
It's funny you mentioned that because I was listening to your podcast with Desmond
Yes.
Ryan. You guys asked him that. And of course, he writes in a couple of different genres, right?
Mhm.
right.
My understanding. And I'm just sticking to this right now.
Right.
Someday I may try historical fiction, but right now,
Ooh.
because I'm a history guy.
Are
Most
you?
of what I read is history. But yes, it is a problem. And with the first book, I had to get over this thing of it wouldn't happen this way. It just wouldn't happen. And this is a real hindrance.
Yeah.
A real hindrance to creativity. The old saying, I know we all have heard this a million times, I've heard it once, write drunk and edit sober. I think there's a little tiny bit of truth to that. I really do. Because
Okay.
if you're inhibited or uninhibited, the juices can really flow. It took me a long time to get over that and get past that and just say, hey, you know what? When I sit down at the computer, I'm God. I create my world. And sometimes I've been writing in the first person and I look at my hero looks at the reader and says, if I don't know what it is or what it's supposed to be correctly, I just look at him and go, I'm not from around here. I don't really know what they're saying either. Kind of break the wall a little bit like they do in the movies sometimes, which I think is
Breaking the
kind of
force.
fun anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that way kind of provides me an exit strategy when I really don't know. And I don't want to write something that's so off the reservation that I lose my credibility. I think one of the things that's important for me is my background and experience and my credibility. And I weave that in the story. So anybody who's been to those places I write about knows that I have been there because he or she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I deliberately did that because I enjoyed that when I would read books.
Right.
I could tell that somebody had been there, especially in the days before Wikipedia and computers where you could fake it.
Yes. Well, I write cozy mysteries that are set in the town that I live in. I don't actually call it the town that I live in because I don't want to get in trouble for killing everybody here. But I have had people who come up and say, I know exactly where that is. And I'm like, don't tell anyone. And they're like, you can tell that it's this place. The flip side, I had a guy, there are some emails, and I hope that you either have had this or will have this. I got an email from somebody who's like, my father and I read these, and he's struggling with Alzheimer's. And so on the days that he's having really bad days, we actually drive around to all the places that you mentioned in the books because right now it's the only thing he remembers. Did I write the book for that? No, that was not in my mind. And yet, do I love and did I bawl my eyes out over that? Abso-freaking-lutely. And so I think when we're putting ourselves into these worlds and when we're creating them, we have to give ourselves some leeway because we're not
Mhm.
getting judged as harshly as we think we are. We're being enjoyed.
That's really true. Especially in the beginning. You've probably been writing a lot longer than I have, but in the beginning,
1990.
you've
So-
got a few books under your belt, okay?
I'm 52. So
Okay,
yes.
well, that's a little more than a few. But anyway, how many times when you first started out did you go, "Oh my God, this is such crap. I can't
Yes.
believe it. This is so awful." And the next day you looked at it and you went, "Oh, you know what? This is actually pretty good."
I'm going to kill something for you here. 52 books later, I still have that.
Yeah, well, okay.
I still look at it and go, why do you think you can do this? And then the next day I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, well, that's why. Get out of your inner critic. Leave that alone for a little bit. I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure Anne has been dying to ask you. What exactly is it that you write? Because I have not read your book yet.
It's a military/detective thriller.
Oh, okay.
Actually, that's what I think is also kind of cool. What makes it different is the protagonist is a embedded advisor with the Army. He's a retired LAPD detective lieutenant who worked counterterrorism, which is my background. And he takes a civilian contractor gig, which is what I did, and art imitating life, and is embedded with the Army as a civilian advisor. And part of the story is a civilian who has no prior military experience thrust into a war zone where they speak a different language and they have a different culture and they have a lot of rules that don't make any sense. One that I always go back on is walking around with an empty gun in a war zone. To me, was really, really dumb. But and a million other little things that seem odd and ticky-tack. And basically, it's a story of him and his co-protagonist, a female Army physician, Major Weaver, who is kind of a bit of a badass herself. In this story, all my female characters are all pretty tough and pretty squared away and hold their own. And I deliberately did that because that's what I encountered. Everybody I encountered over there was so impressive. I was so proud of them and so impressed by them. But anyway, getting back to what you're asking, and it's basically the story of them initially trying to unravel a suspicious death that turns out to be a homicide.
Okay.
And he's doing this on the side as sort of a side gig because he kind of wants to get his detective juices flowing. And it morphs into a terrorism conspiracy of international proportion with that existential threat to the Western world, basically.
Okay, so let me just tell you that while you were talking, I went and bought it.
Bless you.
Although I do have to say, Army. My whole family's Navy. Well, that's not true. My brother-in-law is Army.
I grew up around the Navy. My dad did 20 in the Coast Guard. And so I grew up on Navy bases all over the place. And so I grew up around ships and loved the Navy. And so that's okay.
Okay. All right. Well, we're all right. So Anne might want to talk sometime during the episode.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, exactly.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Anne. Fire away.
Well,
fire when ready.
When I got this book, I looked at it and I read the flyleaf and the little paper that came with it. And I went, no, I'm not going to read this because I don't know about military procedures and stuff. Number one, it was a great help to have that glossary in the back because I could look in the back and see what in Army lingo, what you were saying. But I said, well, I've got to read it before I talk to this gentleman. And I loved this book.
Yay!
Oh that makes me so happy. I have to tell you, every time a woman tells me this, and it happens a lot, that makes me happier than the knuckle dragger guys, buddies of mine that read it and say, yeah, that was really cool, dude. Great job, or something like that. But when a woman appreciates it, I have to tell you, that's knocking it out of the ballpark as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much. You have made my day and my week.
All right.
Good.
Yeah. Awesome.
But
Awesome.
A dark and stormy night.
It was
to make your day, week. I think you should.
And my night too, actually.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, I loved the character of Nancy Weaver. You were right. She was badass.
Yep.
But Rick Sutherland was badass also.
But not a superhero.
No, he wasn't a superhero. He was a human
Exactly.
badass. Is he based on you?
Anne's drawing out
Are
the
you the badass?
big fire.
All right. All right. Here's the truth. The truth is that a lot of those things did happen to me, but a lot of them did not happen to me. And as I tell people who have read the book, who ask me that very same question, if I had all the horrible things happen to me that happened to Rick, I'd be having a Thorazine drip in one arm and Valium in the other hand, and a bottle of whiskey in my lap. But no, some of those things did happen to me. For instance, when Rick is following the bad guys in the surveillance scene, and he accidentally drives off the base.
That's outside the wire.
That is outside the wire. That is for real outside the wire.
Okay.
That happened to me in the middle of the night. And let me tell you something, that was, expert deleted moment.
Right.
Let me just tell you.
Do you love that you can take something that has happened and a person that exists, at least first, only in your mind, and then throw them in the abyss?
Yes.
Because you get to live something that you don't actually have to live, but you get to, in your mind, figure out, what would I do in this situation? And then let's make it 10 times worse.
Yes, well, exactly. Well, I mean, in the tactical situations where there was conflict going on, I drew upon my own training and experience and worked out in my mind and visualized in my mind what thing would be to do in that situation if you're savvy, but not necessarily a Green Beret or somebody who's really knows what the hell they're doing. And that's the way I wrote it. I wrote it like somebody who is reasonably savvy and capable, but not a superhero. And I deliberately wrote it that way because I read a lot of these books and the guys are superheroes. Yeah. And let's face it, most people are not superheroes. Your average young soldier is just, they're young kids. They've got training and they're in great shape. And certainly cops are cops. They come in all flavors and sizes. That's the way I wanted to write it. I wanted him to be kind of a typical average retired 50-year-old guy who's in a war zone and he's going, what the hell? I need a new job. This is crazy.
You write a much different genre than I do. I do cozy mystery, which we're going for like the laughs, the easy death. It's a puzzle. Yes, we want to fool you, but it's not the thriller level of action. However, I think it runs for most books. I want to root for you. And if you're perfect and don't have a single thing wrong with you except you can't sniff kryptonite, I don't necessarily root for you in quite the same way. I'm actually looking for you to fall when you are perfect. But when you're already flawed, you're a good person and you're trying to do your best, but you're going to mess up. My heart is with you on that journey in a way that it's not if you present me with somebody who can do no wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like those kinds of characters. And I think most people respond to them more because they can relate to them and they can visualize themselves in that mold. It becomes harder when you're talking about somebody who is a SEAL Team 6 guy who walks on water and all that. That's sort of why I chose to write in the first person too, because I wanted to add a kind of casual flavor to it in a way, almost conversational tone to it. People have come up to me who have read the book and said, I could hear your voice. Because they know me from the gym and I crack jokes in the gym all the time, especially when I'm in a lot of pain. I make fun of myself and I laugh and I'm like, I laugh because this is so ridiculous. And I'm 60-something years old and I'm doing this. This is insane. They said they could hear that same voice in the book.
Yes.
It's like a high compliment to me, but also told me that I made it very human.
Yes, I've laughed over the years with people and I usually apologize. Because people will say, now that I've met you and heard you talk, it sounds like you're telling me the story in my head. I also write in first person. And I'm like, ooh, sorry about that. Like we should have talked before you thought about reading the book. But it is true because you can make it, especially a thriller, I would think. Cozy mystery is a little different because people are used to Hallmark mysteries and stuff. But a thriller, if you can make it sound like we're sitting across from each other at a coffee and you're like, and then what happened was I went outside the wire. And let me tell you, that was scary as anything. So you are drawing them in a way that is definitely going to make them want to come back. So now I'm going to ask, book 2. Is it book 2 in a series?
Yes,
Or
it is.
Oh,
It is.
okay, good job. 'Cause
Absolutely.
if you
It
had
is.
said
It is.
no,
It's called World Way,
ooh,
and it's LA centric. Rick is back in LA. Nancy is now in the National Guard, and she has a practice in Asheville, North Carolina.
Takes a bit of a commute there.
Well, see, they both had such a difficult experience that it affected their relationship. They still have love for each other and everything, but they kind of had to part
Back
ways
off.
for a while.
Yeah.
And part of this story is they're finding their way back through shared adversity. If you read the book, you can tell there were certain characters that I really had a great affinity for.
Yes.
They are coming back at the end. Larry Clark, who was a captain in the Army. His backstory was he's a reservist in the Army, a captain, and he was a detective with LAPD. Well, he is coming back. And
is Jason going to get on the police force?
You know what? Funny you should mention Jason. I'm trying to figure out what to do with Jason. I want him to be doing something. I think Jason is going to be with the feds somewhere. He's not going to be in LA. He's not going to move to LA. But I think I'm going to make him a fed or something. Danny Hernandez, the Hispanic soldier.
Yeah.
Who I just loved. I loved writing that character. He just reminded me of so many guys I've worked with. He's going to be on the job in LA. He's going to be working at the LAX police, which is separate from LAPD. LAPD and LAX are all within the same confines of the city of Los Angeles, but LAX has their own police department.
yes.
That happened that way, but it's LA, so who knows? Anyway, he's going to be back. His brother, Mikey, who is a general, he's retired now, and he is a mucky-muck in the intelligence division of Department of Homeland Security. And the SAS captain, or actually he's a lieutenant there, Duncan Sinclair.
Yes, I remember him.
He comes back. He makes his appearance in the very first chapter of the next book. He's now a captain in the SAS, and he's returning from Afghanistan, and really bad things happen while he's sitting in an airport in Europe, and he saves the day because he runs to the sound of the guns. He doesn't know anything, and he's a hero straight away.
We're getting exclusive stuff, Anne. We got the name of the second book. We have plot points. We have characters and where they're going to go. I mean, this
is that all. See, I'm new to this stuff. Did I just get sucked into exposing classified?
No,
of course not.
Not with us.
In my business, it's called elicitation. I think I just got elicitated.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Anne and I are pretty snazzy as people, and there is no need for coercion because we're just that awesome. So, of course, you're going to answer our questions because we're smiling at you when we laugh with you. And then you go,
it sucked me right in, right? And you pay me all these compliments, Anne. Man, I was puttying in your hands right there.
Yeah. So if anybody needs a course, just come on over to the Patreon.
Okay,
right.
I'm thinking that you are enjoying, obviously, the writing and are enjoying the experience of getting to put your book out in the world and being able to share it with people. So I'm going to ask you an author question then. What was the worst part of writing the book?
This part.
Oh, come on.
Not with us.
Not this part. Not this part now.
The marketing
it's the promotion part. That's all on me. And I've never done this kind of stuff before. You know, I'm not used to talking about myself like this, and I have to learn how to do that. You know,
but you're doing a great job. I
Yes,
mean, from our side, you're doing a great job on telling us about the story. Like I said, I mean, as you're talking about it, I literally went and bought it because I am intrigued by what you've done, and I will be very interested to see your next one. Somebody who is a very big reader as well as an author, that to me would be something, okay, maybe I'm not doing this wrong. So you're doing a great job. We'll send you a little medal in the mail.
Okay.
You can add it name
I don't
tag.
have any medals.
It'll be like this little pin that says DSN, and they're like dangerous
No, dark, stormy night.
Yeah, you're like, no, it's dark and stormy night. I mean, if
I got
you
my-
don't know, I'm not
Yeah.
going to tell you.
Well, see, that's what you can always do. You always add that little bit of mystery. Sorry, I can't really discuss it.
Right.
And then I wanna know more.
Exactly.
You know?
I would have to kill you if
Right.
I told you.
Yeah, I don't.
Yes.
Yeah,
You don't want, it's not worth it to you. It's not.
exactly. I've already had my killing quotient for the month. I don't want to have to kill.
I don't want to have to start a second page. Okay.
Exactly.
Let's not do that to me or to you. So, as you're coming up with your stories, did Rick come to you first, or did the kind of story you wanted to tell first, and then Rick kind of showed up to be the vehicle that it was told through?
Well, I'll tell you, this is interesting. This actually, when it first came into my head, I was actually bouncing around in my head while I was over there as a murder mystery kind of 10 Little Indians, Agatha Christie kind of thing.
Oh,
Multiple murders have occurred on the base. And I thought like a Nick and Nora Charles kind of man-woman team would be kind of fun and unraveling it. But then when I got home and I started to actually pencil it out and think about it, I thought, you know what? I'm not a Nick and Nora Charles guy.
this isn't going to be funny.
Yeah. And so it morphed into a military/terrorism thriller. And the thing that I think makes it unique and different is there are just not many books like this out there, where you take a police officer basically and thrust him into a wartime environment, and he has to do both things. He has to wear both hats, basically, a detective, and in a pinch actually also be a soldier too, because he performs that function too. He has to fight for his life next to the soldiers.
I liked the bit about the piece of shrapnel. They kept coming at, where is it? Where is it?
That was one of those conflict on every page. I kept hearing that in my head. Got to have conflict. Got to have, I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? I got to throw something at this guy that he's got to deal with every few pages. And then I thought, well, of course, that's what it is, because they literally take everything away from you when you leave the country, that, you know, any line of souvenir or anything. It is technically evidence. They treated stuff like that as evidence, like a crime scene here in the United States. So all of that is true. And it's also true that a guy like Rick would try and purloin it and bring it back to show women in a bar and say, this is what they dug out of my leg. This is exactly what we do, you know.
Anything that'll give you that extra pop of, you want to get to know me, right?
Exactly. You know? That's what Rick would try. Me, not so much, but Rick, yes.
But even as you're telling the story and people are saying this is your voice and you're saying some of this is true, the ability to be able to make Rick into his own person, no matter who he's bounced off of, is, I think, something that y'all strive to do. And from what Anna's saying, that you did a really good job with that. And that's awesome on a first book.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty excited.
See, more compliments.
I know. And yeah, okay, now you're going to try and suck something else out of me.
Oh, don't know my
Give up some other national security secrets or something now. Now the real,
Gary.
This was just all the easy stuff. Now you want to find out some juicy bits.
Right. Right. If you could just hang on a moment, we're going to go ahead and stop recording so that I can ask more. I'm just kidding. Sounds like you had been in the police force for a while. I don't know that I heard how long you had been in before you retired.
30.
You can't be old enough.
This is when you really start working me over.
No, seriously, I would not have guessed that.
Pretty old.
I wouldn't have guessed.
I wouldn't either. You must have had easy cases. You don't have all the
good genes. Good genes.
Good genes. There you go. But being able to do something that obviously was important enough to you to do it for that many years, and then transition it into something where you still get to share it, but you get to share it with a bunch of people who don't have your background, that has to be pretty cool also.
It is. Obviously, I began in law enforcement in 1974. You know, that's a long darn time. I started out as a little baby-faced police explorer, and then worked, you know, did all the other stuff. And then retired in 2008, and then I started doing these other retirement gigs. They were all law enforcement, public safety, counterterrorism related things. Like I did with this book with the military, I kind of want to tell also the story of police work and the reality of police work and the dangers and the humanity of police work. And I did that to a degree in this book, the chapter about Rick's father. And that's my father. My father was killed in line of duty in 1979 while I was in the police academy.
Wow.
So I wrote that to give specifically to show that this is not a game. It's real.
Right.
You know, it's a real business and there are real dangers. And I wanted to give Rick a little more backstory.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is perfect. I can write about this straight from the heart. The way it's portrayed in the book is fictitious, but that's what happened. I was in the training academy when it happened, and he was stabbed to death while he was in uniform working patrol assignment by a crazy guy, which is different than the way it's spelled out in the book.
Yeah.
The story is the same. That's one of the reasons that I put that in there.
Right.
Was to say that. And Larry Clark is inspired by a dear friend of mine who is a retired LAPD sergeant that worked for me as a special agent on my task force. And he passed away a few years ago. And the book is dedicated to him and my father.
Oh,
Oh, that's really
He's
nice.
a wonderful,
Lovely.
wonderful man. Yeah,
Yeah.
really wonderful guy.
Yeah.
see, then you write cozy mysteries, and the things that you put in there are that I really did actually use a shop vac to clean up leaves in my front yard the first time because I didn't understand why anyone was raking. Why would you do that when you can just suck the vacuum cleaner? And so, you know,
What could go
but I-
wrong?
well, you can have people walk down the street and wonder what in the living heck you are doing and why did you move here? And again, you're bringing in the human aspect of it and also getting to put something in there and kind of deal with it in a different way, but also honor that these are real things that can happen. And I think those are my favorite kinds of authors, are the ones that yes, we're all making it up. I mean, that's
Right. Oh,
for
totally.
the most part, that's what we're doing.
We're
But
kind of liars, actually. You know?
yes,
We kind of
you are a professional liar, Gary.
and
I
thieves too.
put that on your card next time when you get new cards. Make little door hangers that say, "Be entertained by a professional liar." That's me.
Exactly.
5-star review, please. So as you're going through and you're explaining these different situations, well, somebody did actually go vacuum their front lawn, and I was like, oh, that was a cautionary tale. It was not supposed to be to encourage you, but you know, in yours, because you're dealing with a deeper subject, a more, you know, thriller aspect in there. People are living in your world without having to live in your
Right.
world. They
Yeah.
can experience through Rick's emotions and decisions how that might work out, but they're still separated enough to not actually be in danger.
But it also makes Rick more of a human.
Right.
It
Exactly.
gives him depth to his character that some people wouldn't just
Right.
they gloss over it and just he's
I
a
mean,
character.
the scene where he's getting ready to go on this mission and his body armor falls from the top of a locker and lands on his
Yes,
toe.
it lands on his
I mean,
toe.
that would never happen to a superhero, but it
But it-
happened to me.
You
On
might
the
not
very,
have told anybody.
I mean, he's not this, I'm gonna go in and save the world and nothing's gonna happen to me. He gets hit by a fragment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. A piece of shrapnel, exactly, in his leg.
Yeah.
And
So-
what was your favorite part?
My
Without
fa-
telling any secrets.
My favorite part of the book was when, let's see, how can I say this without giving
Oh,
anything?
yeah, don't give anything away.
He has to go on a mission to rescue some people.
Okay.
It's all the little things that happened. This person was here and this person was there, and we had to watch out because the bad guy was over here, and we're going to throw a grenade in there and see. It was just one of those, you just couldn't put it down. You had to keep reading to see what happened. It was
Okay.
so good. It really,
So don't read it when I'm supposed to be working or eating.
no, you're gonna wanna not
Concentrated.
miss anything.
Okay. No, it's good to know. I need to know these things. We need to let our listeners know.
Yes,
So Gary's book, you're going to want to put aside real time where people do not need you for anything.
it's a very fast read.
Oh, good.
I've
Because
been told that it is a fast read.
it grabs you, and if I didn't have to sleep, I would have read it in one sitting. But I didn't have to
Wow.
split it
Darn
up.
that sleep.
Wow. Cool boy. That's high praise indeed.
That's right. Well, Gary, we thank you for talking with us. I really did love this book. I thought, this isn't my bag. But oh boy, it was. And I personally am waiting on the edge of my seat for the next one to come, because I want to see what's going on.
You better
Wow.
get that done soon then.
Yes.
Anne doesn't wait well.
I don't wait around.
I've only got 50 pages of the first draft, so
Oh.
give me a little time.
All
All
right.
right, we're going to hang up here so you can get back
Okay.
to work.
Yeah. Why are you here, Gary? You should be writing.
That's right. That's right. Gary, thanks for talking with us. We wish
Thank
you all the best with your book.
Thank you.
And you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. I assure you I will. I'll be going to sleep with a smile on my face that won't break. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
You
Thank
too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Trivia. Last week's question was, author Ellie Griffiths received inspiration for her Ruth Galloway series from whom? A. Relatives, B. Neighbors, C. Street names, or D. Friends from school? The answer is A. The characters were inspired by Griffith's husband, who gave up a city job to train as an archaeologist, and for her aunt, who lives on the Norfolk coast and filled her niece's head with the myths and legends of that area. This week's question is, which author created the charity Save the Libraries? A. Karen Slaughter, B. Jane Winspear, C. Martha Grimes, or D. Robert Ludlum? Tune in next week for the answer, and good luck. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. We hope you enjoyed our visit with Mr. Edgington. We certainly did. And we look forward to meeting a new author next week. Be sure and tune in. And remember,
Life would be boring without a little mystery. Bye.